I'm honored to have back with me someone I consider a friend and someone who's an incredibly courageous freedom fighter on the forefront, if you will, of higher education. Dr. Michael Rectenwald, also known as the anti-PC professor, formerly based at NYU, is an incredible author, but he's also an incredibly courageous, patriotic American who's dedicated his life to academic freedom. His background, he has a BA degree from the University of Pittsburgh, a master's degree from Case Western Reserve University, and a PhD from Carnegie Mellon University. He's written many, many books, some of which are Springtime for Snowflakes. This endeared him to the social justice movement. Springtime for Snowflakes, Social Justice and Its Postmodern Parentage. Also, Google Archipelago, and his most recent book, Beyond Woke. It's my honor to welcome back Mike. Mike, I hope you're there.
I'm here, Dave. How are you doing?
Oh, we made it. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. Mike, so here we are, Mike. Your friends, I use that term facetiously, the social justice warriors, decided that they were going to lay siege starting on September 17th for 50 days to the White House.
Right.
Then, the day before that was supposed to start on September 17th, well, Attorney General Barr stepped up. And he said, well, you know what? Starting today, what we're going to do is we're going to charge rioters with sedition.
Indeed.
Hey, Mike, guess what? The 50-day siege that was supposed to start on Thursday night, well, it was canceled. Does that shock you?
No, I'm so glad that Attorney General Barr stepped up and put an end to this insane, seditious behavior on the part of the left. And now they're threatening, of course, to burn down everything because if Trump nominates, which he will, a Supreme Court justice, and if the Senate takes up the confirmation hearings. So I'm very sanguine about the prospects, given that September 17th siege on the White House was canceled. And I think it's time to step up and to meet these leftists and their bluster with appropriate force. It really is.
You know, Mike, you have actually been a role model and to show us how we should respond to basically these thugs in Antifa and this Black Lives Matters group whose founders say it was founded on being Marxist terrorists. You've always told us and shown us that you need to confront these people head on and never give an inch.
Absolutely. They are, listen, Black Lives Matter is a misnomer if there ever was one. These people are Marxists and a Trojan horse under the guise of caring about black lives. They don't care about black lives. They've murdered more black people than anybody lately, and they are a dangerous element. They must be met with opposition, and I'm glad the state is stepping up because I'd hate to see the patriots have to do their duty.
So, Mike, by way of history, you have an intimate knowledge, a deep-seated knowledge in how these folks think and how they act, because I've described you in your in your previous years that you had actually were, if you will, I would say, left of the Bolsheviks. I'm not trying to be mean, but I mean I believe that's an accurate assessment. Am I on target?
That's correct. I was very misled, very misguided, and thanks to the indoctrination that goes on in the universities, I was a Marxist. And, I have since come to see the error of my ways. And furthermore, I am now a vociferous opponent of Marxism in every respect. And I know it from the inside out. I know how these people think. I know where their ideas are coming from. I know exactly where their values lie, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm here to oppose them in every way possible.
So, Mike, what is the best way for our listeners? We have listeners in all 50 states, actually from 60 countries around the world. And this is not just confined to our country right now. We are seeing this worldwide. So what is the best way for our listeners to deal with these Antifa thugs and these Black Lives Matters individuals? So let's say one of our listeners, you've seen these videos before. People are peacefully eating at a restaurant, whether it's in downtown Pittsburgh or Rochester or wherever it might be. They're peacefully eating at a restaurant, and all of a sudden, their restaurant is overrun with these terrorists.
Right.
So if Mike Rectenwald was there having a meal and this happened, what would Mike Rectenwald do, and what would he recommend to others?
Well, Mike Rectenwald is a little bit different. I would stand up to them, and I would vociferously oppose them. And what I would do is tell them that their legacy is 100 million people murdered in the name of Marxism, and that they have no moral high ground whatsoever. These people believe that they are more moral than us. They think that their ideology is superior, but only has to show them the facts. The facts are that they have littered the ground with corpses over the past century. They are responsible for more deaths than any other ideology on earth, any other political movement. It is the most gruesome, tyrannical, totalitarian, and fascist movement in history. These people have no moral high ground. They have to be told this. They have to be told it vociferously. If they come to me at a dinner table, first of all, I'm calling 911. Second of all, I'm filming everything. And third of all, I'm standing up to them, and I'm not going to let them cower me into quiescence. I'm going to absolutely go at them. And if they go further, then they're going to take they'll take matters into their own hands. They'll be dealing with force, because I believe in self-protection. I have my own rights. I have the right to speak. I have the right to my own personal safety. I have the right to my own property. These things are endowed to me by my Creator, and they don't have any right to take them away.
And Mike, this is exactly what happened to you. It didn't happen in a restaurant to you. It happened on a college campus. This same type of thuggery happened to you, and this is how you responded. And educate our listeners when you fought back against them, because they're not used to people fighting back, these thugs. They're used to people caving. But when you fought back, educate our listeners on what happened.
Well, I stood up to them, and I called them out for what they were. And I was attacked by, 100 faculty members. I was deemed basically a pariah on NYU's campus. They moved my office to the Russian department. They put me in my own personal gulag, if you will. But I didn't stop. I kept speaking out. I kept asserting my right to speech. Eventually, NYU paid me off to shut me up. Because they cannot silence the truth. This is a fact. And so the fact of the matter is to stand strong and not to abdicate your ground. These people are relying on our quailing in their face. You can't do it. You have to stand your ground and continue to speak out. And I let the chips fall where they may, and they did. And I'm not at all, I have no regrets whatsoever.
So, Mike, now let's go back to the restaurant. Mike Rectenwald is having dinner, and the Black Lives Matter Antifa thugs come in and start raising heck. And you do what you said you're going to do. You call 911. You hand your phone to somebody to film video what happens, and you confront them about their own past, how they cannot take the moral high ground with 100 million people dead because of Marxism. Tell me what you think would then happen when you stood up and started yelling back at them. What happens then?
Well, it's hard to say. Most likely they're going to escalate, but what I will do is I will not stop. and I will spit out more facts at them than they can even register in a 5-minute period. I will not stop telling them the truth. I will say what their ideology is about, what it has done in history, what it is doing today, how many murders they've committed. They've committed at least 30 murders so far. They've killed more black people than police officers have in the same period. I would tell them that they don't have any high ground on me, and I am not going to back down. If they take it to the physical level, then I can't tell you what will happen at that point.
It's interesting, Mike.
It isn't going to be me stopping, that's for sure. If somebody assaults me, I'm going to meet them with force.
You know, Mike, the politicians of the world, the Nancy Pelosi's, the Chuck Schumers, the Mitt Romneys, they tell everybody, you should take a knee. You should bend in deference to Antifa and to Black Lives Matter. A direct opposite to the approach you just painted. And I believe one of the reasons why this escalated to the point it is now escalated to is not because of your philosophy, but because of, if you will, the philosophy of Romney and Pelosi and Schumer and Biden and Harris about bending a knee.
Absolutely. I would never, ever bend a knee or raise my fist in solidarity with a Marxist group. Never would I let them cower me or pressure me into any expression that I deem antithetical to my views. And they are not going to get me to bend, to do anything in acquiescence to their demands. Absolutely not, no matter what. I'll stand my ground firmly, and I'll let the chips fall where they may, just as I have historically.
And what we're seeing historically now, Mike, is a number of people have actually adopted your philosophy and have stood up to these thugs. And what's happening now is Black Lives Matter, who initially had a huge approval rating in May and in June, their, quote, approval rating, even with the most biased of polling, is showing that the public has turned against Black Lives Matter. And in particular, as you outlined earlier in this interview, the minority communities.
Right.
Are saying, get out of here. Get out of here.
The overwhelming majority of the minority communities disapprove of Black Lives Matter. They disavow their views. They want nothing to do with them. Black Lives Matter has destroyed more Black lives, businesses, more Black lives, more neighborhoods. They have no concern for Black lives whatsoever. They have nothing to do with Black lives. They have everything to do with trying to overturn the system itself. A system, by the way, that has produced more wealth in history than any other in the human race, in human history. It is the best system that's ever been devised. It's the system based on individual rights, not group rights or group compulsion. And there's nothing they can do to prove it wrong. I mean, this is the most extreme, negative, the most absolutely immiserating philosophy that has ever been introduced to the human race.
Mike, we're less than 60 days away from an election. Tell me where you think what's going to happen over the next 60 days.
Well, in the interim, we're going to see a Supreme Court nominee, and we're going to see a tremendous amount of violence from the left. They're going to up the ante. If their promises have any meaning on the social media, you can see them promising to burn everything down, to riot, to basically more of the same. But I think that what's going to happen is that the election will be a virtual landslide on November 3rd, and then they're going to try their legerdemain of their ballot harvesting. And I think that what's going to happen is that the president is going to have to, he's going to have to use the Insurrection Act, because there's nothing that's going to put these people down there's nothing that's going to stop them unless they're met with force, I'm afraid.
Well, we just saw that, as we mentioned at the beginning of the interview with A.G. Barr. He said, if you're going to do this 50 days of siege of arson and rioting, and you know what? You're going to be arrested and you're going to be hit with sedition, which sedition, I think, carries with it at least a 20-year prison sentence.
Absolutely, and it should. Listen, this is not any longer protest. This has not been protest since really day one. This is sedition. This is people that want to overthrow the system. They want to overthrow the whole Constitution. They don't believe in the Constitution. They think it's racist to the core or classist or whatever they want to call it to the core. Listen, these are people that want nothing to do with the United States of America as it stands. They want a whole different system. They're trying to change every law that they can. If they get power, we're in deep doo-doo, as you know. Let's just pray, hope, and exert our will against this nefarious force.
Folks, we're speaking with Dr. Michael Rectenwald, the anti-PC professor. He has a website. It's fantastic with his work on it. Michael Rectenwald, Rectenwald, Rectenwald.com, michaelrectenwald.com. And in fact, many people, after Mike's on every time on our platform, folks contact me and say, hey, Dr. Rectenwald is fantastic. And he truly is a role model for freedom. And his transformation is incredible as far as where he was left of the Bolsheviks to now freedom fighter extraordinaire. How can I support him? Mike, the answer to that is, tell me if I'm wrong, there is a link on your website, michaelrectenwald.com, to your GoFundMe page so that you can continue to produce the literary works you do that take on the totalitarian thugs on a minute-by-minute basis.
That's correct. You can go to michaelrectenwald.com. You'll see... in fact, if I could direct the readers a little more closely, if they go to michaelrectenwald.com and then go to Apogee Bookstore, I sign personalized signed copies to anybody that orders through Apogee Bookstore instead of Amazon.com. I have a new novel out called Thought Criminal, and it's
Thought
been
Criminal.
called
Tell us about that.
Pardon?
Tell us about that.
Yes, it's been called the 1984 of the COVID era. I decided to write a book of fiction, but it's called An Allegory for Our Collectivist Times, and it's about a hero who overcomes the collectivist forces that are besieging us today. It's called Thought Criminal.
It's essentially 2020.
That's right. But it is fiction, and it paints a picture of the collectivists, and there's a character who's a former professor who is now fighting against collective mind, as I call it in the novel, and collective mind is attempting to connect everybody through a virus to its database and totally control their thinking.